interested in the same, want the city.
Thank you very much. This would be a good time to give all the candidates a big round of applause. Before we take a 10-minute break, we'll be back for the Sheriff's Forum at 8:20, but we have one announcement.
Wanted to let you know that there is voter registration back here and information about registering online, so please let people know. Bill Leone over here has the information handy. We also have information on the measures that are on the ballot, so along here you can pick that up as well as the candidate information back here. And if you have specific questions for the sheriffs, forum, please do write them down. We're still accepting those. And please do stay just for a very short break, and then we'll get right on to the Sheriff's Forum. Thank you.
Scott Miller. I'm the Sheriff Coroner of Monterey County. I've been Sheriff for 4 years. And if this were a student body election, and if we were running for student body officer or student body president, this might be an interesting contest, but we're not. We're running for the chief executive position in the largest law enforcement agency on the Central Coast between Santa Barbara and San Jose. I have a budget now of over $90 million, 300 badge-carrying personnel, gun-carrying personnel, and 120 support people. And these are things that need executive leadership to run an operation this size. Your public safety, your safety, and the safety of your families requires that the Monterey County Sheriff's Office be run in the most efficient and effective manner possible. I have 18 years of executive experience, including 4 years as sheriff, 6 years as a police chief, and 8 years with the Salinas PD as the number 2 with the Salinas Police Department. I have a bachelor's degree in organizational behavior and a master's degree in management. I have a solid track record of accomplishments at the Sheriff's Office, including obtaining $89 million for a critically needed jail expansion project, hiring 42 deputies in the last 18 months, and hiring 24 civilian individuals to replace sworn personnel within the jails so that those deputies can come out on the floor in the jail and out on the streets and into investigations at a much lower cost than the cost of a deputy sheriff. So I'd appreciate your support in the election on November 4th. It is a privilege to be your sheriff, and I look forward to this forum so that you can make an informed decision at the end of this evening. Thank you very much.
Mr. Bernal.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Steve Bernal. I was born and raised here in Monterey County, and my roots run generations deep here. My wife Leslie and I have been married for 24 years, and we've raised 3 wonderful children here. I've been with the Sheriff's Office for 15 years, and I'm running for sheriff because our office is in need of new leadership. Gang violence and drug trafficking is an ongoing problem here in Monterey County, and it's spread countywide, and it's not just in Salinas, it's right here on the peninsula. Predators seek to engage our children on a daily basis, and they've turned to the internet to engage them. Yet, unlike San Jose, Santa Clara, and Santa Cruz County, we have no high-tech cyber crimes unit to deal with it. Agriculture, the $4 billion foundation of our local economy, is threatened on a daily basis by theft and vandalism, yet for years we have only had 1 detective assigned to that unit. Our Sheriff's Office suffers from waste and mismanagement. We've seen a management style in the past 4 years where we've seen a top-down style of decision-making, personnel decisions that have been used to punish rather than to promote. In years past, the Sheriff's Office has had a reputation for professionalism, integrity, and community engagement. I have a plan that's based on professionalism, innovation, and collaboration, and that's why the Deputy Sheriff's Association, the last 4 former sheriffs of Monterey County, all support my candidacy for Monterey County Sheriff, and that's why I'm here today to ask you for your support and your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Our first question is, most campaigns promise many things. Can you get very specific? What one management action is your highest priority? What one law enforcement action is your highest priority? And we start with Mr. Bernal.
There's always a lot of promises made during campaigns, but the one management action, I believe that's the first question, the management action is I am going to surround myself with an executive management team that has proven themselves in Monterey County at the Sheriff's Office, and it's going to be based on integrity and professionalism. That's the biggest change I'm going to make. As far as law enforcement, gang violence is still on the rise. Narcotics trafficking, yet we need to focus on the gang problem. It's just not in Salinas, it's here on the peninsula. It's everywhere. It's in South County, it's in North County. And we need to focus our efforts countywide, and we need to get to the root of the problem. That's also with our youth.
Mr. Miller.
Thank you. You know, from a management standpoint, it's helpful if you have management experience, if you can identify a management issue, and my opponent has no management experience. I was promoted into a management position 30 years ago and have been a manager and executive in law enforcement agencies ever since, and I know what it takes to manage a large organization. From a management standpoint, the most critical issue is to have full staffing, and as of today, we have only 2 openings in the Sheriff's Office in the deputy ranks, except for 11 additional deputies, which I was authorized to hire this last Tuesday. So we do need to keep the staffing levels up, and that's why that's the most important management issue, is to get staffing up to where it needs to be. In terms of law enforcement, we have the most robust gang and narcotics task force, the largest such task force outside of Los Angeles in the state of California. They're an excellent team, and we're getting more excellent all the time. We just entered into a unique arrangement.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We did. It was a unique.
How much crisis intervention training must deputy sheriffs take in order to better work with the mentally ill? Do you believe the training should be mandatory? Mr. Miller, you're first.
Yes, it's critical training, and I think about half of our deputies have that training, crisis intervention training. In fact, we're hosting an international conference of crisis intervention training next week here locally. And this all spawned from the Charles Vaughn incident that occurred in Seaside, and most of you will remember that if you've lived around here for a very long time. And I was police chief in Pacific Grove when that happened and helped lay the groundwork for the crisis intervention training that we do in Monterey County. It's critical training, and it's the kind of training that should be mandatory for all police officers and deputy sheriffs. That's the goal of all of us in the Monterey County Police Chiefs Association, is to make sure that all of our folks have that training. It's much better to have that training than to have to rely on social workers coming from the mental health unit. It's good if every police officer on the road and every deputy on the road has that particular training. It will save lives.
Mr. Bernal?
I agree. Every officer should be trained in critical incident training, and the key word is every officer. Not every officer in our department is trained. So I think it is very vital to have every officer trained in that.
Okay. The next question. Given the prolific gang activity and violence in Monterey County and in Seaside, what are your feelings on private ownership of firearms for personal protection? Mr. Bernal?
Well, the answer is really simple. I believe in our Second Amendment rights to bear arms, and we shouldn't stray from the Constitution. Simple.
Oh, thank you. Mr. Miller?
Well, certainly we don't want to violate the Constitution, and anyone can possess, if they're not a convicted felon or under a domestic violence restraining order or similar type restrictions, they can own and possess firearms within their residence. It's also important, I think, that law-abiding residents have the ability to carry concealed weapons when they've shown themselves to be reliable and responsible enough to do that. We have a thorough screening process that allows us to do that within Monterey County, so that especially people who live in rural environments where they have to travel in their vehicles for long distances in the middle of the night, for example, have the ability to protect themselves legally, so that they're not left to carry a firearm, a loaded firearm within their vehicle illegally, but they're able to react when they come upon a situation that would require such equipment.
Okay, the next question. What will you do to stop the schools to gangs to jail pipeline? Mr. Miller is first.
It's an excellent question, and for the last 25 or 30 years, I've been working on those very issues, and I've put my money where my mouth is. Intervention and prevention are important to stop the pipeline of kids that getting into gangs. The amount of kids that are in gangs in Monterey County that are certified gang members is way too high, and we realize that we cannot arrest ourselves out of gang issues, and we're having some success at the entry level. I belong to the Community Alliance on Safety and Peace. I've belonged to many different groups, including the Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Commission in Monterey County. It's critical that we work with our schools so that we can reduce the amount of kids that are getting into gangs. We need to involve them in art, sports, music, and educational pursuits that will keep them out of gangs. If they're doing something and they're busy, they will have less time to get involved in criminal gangs.
Thank you, Mr. Bernal.
Early youth intervention. We spend $300,000 a year to house a youth inmate in our jail system, $60,000 a year for an adult. So early youth intervention, alternative sentencing, we need to get, that's when I say we need to get to the root of the problem. We need to have more community engagement, and specifically with our children and the parents of these children of potential gang members. So we need to get to the root of the problem, and that's dealing with our youth and youth intervention.
Okay, thank you. Describe your formal education as it relates to your qualifications to be sheriff. Mr. Bernal.
I've been employed with the sheriff's office for 15 years. I've worked 3 years in the jail. I've worked the main jail. I've worked transportation. I've worked as a bailiff. As a patrol deputy, I've worked all 3 stations in Monterey County, and I am currently working in the South County office. And I've built a great reputation based on honesty and integrity with the people I serve in Monterey County.
Mr. Miller.
With all due respect, I think that answer was that he has no formal education as it relates to this job. I have an Associate of Arts degree from Monterey Peninsula College, a bachelor's degree in organizational management from the University of San Francisco, a master's degree in management from Cal Poly Pomona. I've attended the two most important graduate schools for law enforcement executives in the world, the FBI National Academy in Quantico, Virginia, and the California Post Command College here in California. I think it's critical for executive level individuals, executive level, a sheriff position, for example, that you have that type of education so that you have a broad breadth of resources to draw on when it comes to making critical decisions such as staffing and deployment and things of that nature. While I respect my opponent's experience as a deputy, it is deputy experience and not executive experience.
Describe your experience in working with community-based organizations. Mr. Miller.
Thank you. I've been a board member of a number of community-based organizations. I mentioned my participation with the Community Alliance for Safety and Peace. I've been a long-term member of the Child Abuse Prevention Council. I've been the vice chair of the Monterey County Domestic Violence Coordinating Council. I was a board member of the Tri-County Goodwill Industries of Santa Cruz, Monterey, and San Benito counties. I've been a scoutmaster. I was a charter member of the Salinas Police Activities League. I have many different functions that I've had in terms of working with community-based organizations. I was a 4-year member of the board of directors of the Second Chance Youth Program, which intervenes with gangs and gang violence. So my experience is robust when it comes to my opportunities with community-based organizations, and I value those experiences.
Thank you. Mr. Bernal.
I'm a full-time working deputy, but I have found time to work with Soul Treasures. It's a cultural arts center down in South Monterey County in King City, and they focus on arts for children, a lot of at-risk children. I've taught songwriting classes during the summer to these children, and as sheriff, you have a seat on most organizations in this county, in the state. And as sheriff, I will be an active member of all those seats that I am a member of as sheriff when I take office.
I'm supposed to announce that questions must be addressed to both candidates. So if you're writing questions, please make them general enough that they can both answer them. Okay, this questioner says, I have talked to Latino groups which would like to be consulted about how their neighborhood is being policed. Would you be willing to meet with Latino, NAACP, etc. groups to give them options on how information is obtained from the community? Mr. Bernal.
Part of my plan is more community engagement. And yes, of course, we need more community engagement. We need to communicate with the people we serve. Town hall meetings in every part of the county. Getting the community involved with the sheriff's office, making them part of the team. And it all starts with more community engagement, more collaboration with the people we serve. So the answer to the question is yes, we need more of that. We need to communicate with the Latino community, with everybody in Monterey County.
Mr. Miller?
I don't think you heard anything in there that he has done. It's things that he will do. I'm a proud member of the NAACP. I attend meetings regularly. I actually attended a forum of candidates at the North Monterey County LULAC chapter last Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. Mr. Bernal said he was going to be there, and the chair stayed empty for the hour I was there, and he never showed up. I meet regularly with North Monterey County LULAC. I meet regularly with the NAACP and other such organizations. I'm proud of my 38-year history of working with the community. I've actually held town hall meetings. I've actually attended meetings throughout this county, from Lockwood and Bryson Hesperia in the south to Chular and Pajaro, Las Lomas, Big Sur. There isn't a community in this county that I haven't reached with outreach, with community meetings, and with connections. I have an excellent relationship with our diverse community. I speak Spanish fluently, and many of the meetings I've attended have actually been in Spanish.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Discuss standards on SWAT actions and comment on militarization of law enforcement. Mr. Miller.
You know, I'm proud to say there's a number of members of our SWAT team in the audience here this evening, and afterwards perhaps they would even give you some technical answers as to what they think about that question. But I think it's critical that we have a well-trained SWAT team and that they're well-equipped, and our SWAT team is now second to none in the Central Coast. They compete well when they go up against other teams, and they work well with all the other local SWAT teams that we have. And that wasn't the case when I took over as sheriff. The training had been greatly reduced, and we doubled and tripled the amount of training, not only for our excellent SWAT team, but for our deputies throughout. We used to qualify twice a year. Now we qualify 4 times a year. The level of training for every member of the Monterey County Sheriff's Office has increased dramatically under my watch.
Thank you. Mr. Bernal?
I think it's important to have a well-trained SWAT team. But as you know, as you can see, the SWAT team here today, they're here to support Sheriff Miller because he has been very generous in their training. If you read the papers probably tomorrow, you'll see that there was a vote of no confidence for the sheriff, and 119 DSA members voted no confidence, and 65 were against that vote. And if you added up the 40 new hires, I'm sure are confident in the sheriff because they just got hired by him. And then the other 20 are our SWAT team. So it's nice to see people here showing their support for Sheriff Miller.
Okay. If ag crime is a problem, how can you better defend against it? Mr. Bernal.
For one, by having an ag crime task force that's dedicated to ag crimes. Right now, for many years, we had one detective assigned to the ag crimes task force. A task force with one detective. It's a $4 billion industry. It's the foundation of our local economy. And we just recently, when the election cycle started up, we added another deputy to it, another detective to it. But they don't focus solely on ag crimes. They work other crimes also. We need them focused on ag crimes. Ag crimes are connected to bigger crimes. They're out there stealing tractors, sprinkler heads. They're using the money to buy drugs that our gangs are selling. So they're all connected. So the answer is to build our ag crimes task force to fit the needs of our ag community.
Mr. Miller?
We do, in fact, have 2 ag crime detectives on a task force. Mr. Bernal, up until last week, was saying we only had 1. He was continuing with that, even though we've had 2 for most of the year. One way we can improve is by what we're doing, which is working in teamwork with farms and ranches throughout Monterey County. It is such a huge industry, and they do have plenty of resources. And by working together, we can force multiply the effect we can have on ag crimes. I think it's also important to realize that we have a station down in King City with a lot of deputies who can become expert at ag crime. Deputy Bernal has suggested previously that perhaps the sheriff could come up with someone who could train deputies in that office to better investigate ag crimes, and I would suggest that based on his history, Deputy Bernal would be an excellent resource if he would have chosen to instruct those people in that station to help find ag crime, detect it, and arrest those responsible. But we have excellent partnerships with our ranches and farms.
Thank you. Please comment on the just released Lost Youth Study on Homicides of Youths age 18 to 24 by Violence Policy Center. Monterey County continues as the highest county with an unacceptable rate. Mr. Miller?
Thank you. I read that study yesterday, and that study referred to 2012. In 2009, we had the highest rate we've ever had in Monterey County, and you find us routinely in the top 5 of those studies. And that has to do with the amount of certified gang members that are violent within this county that exact violence on other gang members for the most part. After, when I took office the first year in 2011, there was a precipitous drop, almost a 50% drop in gang violence. 2012 was up. The federal officials who were just here visiting with the Community Alliance on Safety and Peace say that violence is now trending down. And I believe that's a response to the intervention, prevention, and suppression techniques that we've been using. So that information is 2 years old. It will kind of be like a roller coaster, and we'll work to keep that down as much as we can through all the various means that we have.
Thank you. Mr. Bernal?
The answer is pretty simple. We need to reach our youth before they turn to gangs, before they turn to drugs. We need to keep them out of our jail system. We need to point them in the right direction. And that's youth intervention and reaching our youth. We have a lot of underserved communities in our county, and the sheriff's office needs to connect with these communities to show that we don't just go out there and arrest people. We're out there to help prevent people from taking the path to gangs, to jail, to go into prison. Once they're in the juvenile detention center, then that's their first step to a hardened path to gang life. So we need to prevent them from taking that path, and it comes down to youth intervention.
Thank you. Are you willing to consider supporting prison fellowship jail programs with a 7% recidivism rate versus state prison rearrest rate of 63%? Mr. Bernal?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I'm not sure I understand it.
Okay. Are you willing to consider supporting prison fellowship jail programs with a 7% recidivism rate versus the state prison rearrest rate of 63%?
You know, anything that will cut back the recidivism rate is the path we should be taking. We can expand our jail by another 1,000 beds and we can fill it in a weekend, but the answer is not expanding our jail. The answer is trying to prevent people from entering our jails with alternative sentencing. We shouldn't be housing drug offenders in jail. We should come up with programs to keep them from entering our jails.
Mr. Miller?
We actually have programs. I'm familiar with that program, and it's a possibility. But what I've done as sheriff is I've obtained funding for 2 additional classrooms attached to the jail so that we can triple the amount of training that goes on. We're preparing for vocational training programs for the inmates that we have that are now in custody for much longer than they ever have been in the past. I also obtained the funding to hire a program manager who came to us from Salinas Valley State Prison and is an expert on those types of evidence-based programs that have the best results in reducing recidivism. We also have an ombudsman who works with the jail population so that they can better access the resources we have. We have a partnership in the Community Corrections Partnership that dovetails with job placement, housing, and job training and education, job skills, so that we can reduce recidivism on a long-term basis, and that's our ultimate goal.
Thank you. The jail charges commissions, fees on making telephone calls and putting dollars into inmates' accounts. as sheriff, would you abolish the commission or see how the collected dollars are used? Mr. Miller's first.
Thank you. Actually, we're in the process now of finalizing a new contract with the provider of our inmate phone services in Monterey County Jail. And part of our demands to the 3 companies that were bidding was that they lowered the commissions that were charged to the end users. Because as you all know, if you've ever had anyone in a jail and you've had to call them or they've called you, the inmates aren't the ones generally paying for those phone calls. You are. Grandma is. The wife is. The people who can least afford to do that. So it was important to us that we lowered the cost of phone calls to the end users, because it's very therapeutic that the end users are able to speak as much as possible with the inmates that are in the jail. We know that the familial connections are key to lowering recidivism and helping with the rehabilitation of those people who are in the inmate population. So we will continue doing that as we go forward to finalize this contract.
Mr. Bernal?
I agree. If you have somebody incarcerated, we need to make it easier on you, the person that's not incarcerated, trying to communicate with an inmate. So trying to cut down on those costs for you would be a big issue, yes.
Okay. If elected or re-elected, how do you propose to ease the overcrowdedness of drug and alcohol offenders? What programs other than Choices and Pride do you have to offer? Mr. Bernal.
Again, I'm a working deputy right now, and we need to explore more programs. We don't have those programs right now. As you can see, our jail is constantly overcrowded. We have to build a jail expansion to ease the pressure. So we need to find new and innovative ways to keep people from reoffending, to keep them from abusing substance abuse, from alcohol abuse. So we need to continually explore and work with the community to come up with these solutions to keep them out of our jails.
Thank you. Mr. Miller?
We've actually implemented a number of changes along these lines, but we're continually looking at the types of programs that will work. I did go and get $89 million for a jail expansion because the jail was overcrowded, and the jail is less crowded since I became sheriff than it was prior to me becoming sheriff. And that $80 million will construct 288 double cells, 576 additional beds, and the Monterey County Jail will never be overcrowded again. The inmate population and the staff in the jail will be safer because of the steps that I've taken to do this. We will implement whatever programs we can to reduce recidivism, and we know that approximately 80% of the people in our jail do have alcohol and narcotics substance abuse issues. And we're cognizant of that fact, and we're bringing in all the resources we can to bear on those issues so that ultimately we can reduce the jail population.
Okay. Can the sheriff legally deliver on the promises made to the deputies union which gained his endorsement? Which gained their endorsement, sorry. Mr. Miller.
If we're talking about the most recent endorsement that was obtained by Deputy Bernal, no. There were promises made by Deputy Bernal in writing to the deputies, particularly focused on those in the jail that are illegal, unethical, violate the law enforcement code of ethics, and they're immoral from an executive standpoint. He said that he would give them free meals back after free meals had been removed by my predecessor because they're illegal and they violate the contract provisions of Monterey County. He said he would no longer investigate citizen complaints, internal affairs complaints, unless it looked like the individual deputy had possibly committed a crime. Those cases get referred to the district attorney, not to internal affairs. And he also said he would make no executive decisions unless everybody in the department unanimously agreed. And I've never had any decision I've made as an executive where everyone in the organization agreed. That's the difference between an executive level person and a deputy.
Thank you. Mr. Bernal.
Well, the sheriff has taken that letter out of context. The deputy sheriffs that I wrote that letter to did not take it out of context. They were not promises. They simply wanted me to address the issues that they were having in the jail, and I addressed them. They weren't promises, and they understand that they're not promises. They know that I'm going to address the issues. That's why I got the DSA endorsement, is because they have so many issues in the Monterey County Jail, and our management is not addressing those issues.
How about community service instead of jail prison time for perpetrators of nonviolent, victimless crimes? Mr. Bernal.
It's a great answer to keep people from overcrowding the jail. Put them out to work in our community and keep them out of jail, but there comes a point when you see them, the same person over and over again, there needs to be a punishment, there needs to be some jail time. But anytime we can do something other than just housing them in our jail is a great idea.
Mr. Miller?
There may be a misconception that people who commit victimless, non-serious, non-violent crimes are actually stuffing our jail. That's absolutely not true. We actually handle about 1,000 individuals a year through our work alternative program, where people who qualify for that, and those types of crimes would qualify for that, generally speaking, are not in the jail. The jail, for the most part, are the violent people who are awaiting trial. About 3/4 of the people in the jail are awaiting trial. They're not sentenced. And there are split sentences now, which are increasing dramatically, where people serve some time in jail and serve a majority of it outside of the jail. But we have been doing that to reduce the jail population since I took over as sheriff. We've taken a number of steps to accomplish that. And that certainly is the focus of prison realignment, that's the population that was intended not to spend a long time in jail, and that's the real way that that's actually happening now.
All right, this will be the last question, and then it will be time for closing statements. What are the methods the Sheriff's Department uses to train personnel for domestic violence incident intervention? What would you like to do? How would you like to improve that? Mr. Miller.
Thank you. Actually, in 1986, we had a dramatic change in the penal code in California that changed our domestic violence laws forever. And as a sergeant with the Salinas Police Department, I trained 150 police officers in domestic violence, the cycle of violence, the dynamics of domestic violence. I served on the Monterey County Domestic Violence Coordinating Council for years. I was the vice chair. Domestic violence issues are very near and dear to my heart. All of our deputies receive training in the Basic Police Academy now in domestic violence prevention. Our supervisors, our management team all know that there's no level of domestic violence that's acceptable, and that's a philosophy that we carry forward. We have mandatory arrest laws and policies in place to protect women in our community and other victims that we deal with on a daily basis.
Thank you. Mr. Bernal?
We can always use increased training in every area, and that includes domestic violence. We receive that training in the academy, but we don't receive enough continuing education training in domestic violence. So we should be receiving more continuing education in domestic violence.
Thank you. Now it's time for each candidate to have a closing statement of 1 minute, and by lot, Mr. Bernal goes first, and Mr. Miller is the second one.
I'm sorry, 1 minute?
1 minute.
Okay. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. I've been employed with the Sheriff's Office for 15 years. I've gained a lot of positive contact with the people I serve. I have trained deputies in the South County Office on ag crimes. I've taken that upon myself. Since I was born and raised in South Monterey County, I have taken it upon myself to educate the deputies that didn't grow up in this community on the whole dynamics of the ag community, and I have transferred my knowledge to them. The Sheriff's Office is being mismanaged right now, and they have diverted over $15 million of your tax dollars to staff overtime, money that could have and should have been used to hire additional deputies. We need a change in leadership, and I will be that change based on honesty and integrity. And I will bring an executive management team into the Sheriff's Office based on honesty and integrity, and we will have increased community interaction. And I would be honored to have your vote on November 4th.
Mr. Miller.
Thank you very much, and thank you again to all of you for coming. You know, I think by now that the choice is clear between an entry-level deputy with absolutely no supervisory management or executive experience and me, who has 18 years of executive experience, 31 years in law enforcement, and have managed multi-million-dollar law enforcement agency budgets for the last 20-plus years. Experience is important. It's not enough to be an entry-level deputy in a patrol car in the South County Station. It's important that you work with the community. It's important that you know how to make the tough decisions on budgeting, human resources, and everything else that an executive faces. So please join Governor Jerry Brown, Helen Rucker, Assembly Members Luis Alejo and Mark Stone, State Senators Bill Monning and Anthony Canella, the California Police Chiefs Association and California Victims United, to endorse me and to support me in my re-election bid as sheriff. I'd be proud to serve another 4 years so we can keep continuity going. Thank you.
And let's give both the candidates a big round of applause, and thank you for being here.